Welcome, everybody, to Integrate Yourself. We're your hosts, Allison Pillow and Maya Gottlieb. You can find me, Allison, at pureenergypdx.com, and you can find Maya at mayagottlieb.com. Today, we're here with Dr. Renee Mudrey. She is an educational psychologist and an associate professor of educational psychology and owner of Transcendent Heart Life Coaching. Dr. Renee is a leading researcher and expert in emotion regulation, emotion management, and emotional health. Her website is transcendentheart.com. I really, really love your videos, Renee. I'd love to actually hear more about your background and what inspired you to get into this kind of work with people.
Oh, absolutely. I have been in the field of education for 23 years now. That is like telling my age at this point. Yeah, we don't want to tell anybody that, but I was a high school teacher for many years and decided to go back and get my PhD because I wanted to make a greater impact on the educational system. So I had gone through and got my master's in administration, tried my hand at principalship, realized that was not what I wanted to do with my life, and found the field of educational psychology, which was such a beautiful place between traditional psychology and education. And it really did a nice job of taking my beliefs about mindset and why people do what they do and how do we motivate individuals, and having been an athlete for many years, was very fascinated in how to help motivate my students more. So got into the field of educational psychology, earned my PhD, and became a university professor, and now have been doing that for about 13 years, and really got interested in the field of emotion regulation because one of the things I consistently kept seeing was that no matter what we were thinking about, athletics, academics, there was always this story that needed to be told as to why someone believed that they couldn't do something or why one was outperforming somebody else. It always came back to mindset and the belief of whether we could and how that met the intersection of ability, right? And so those two things kind of came together for me. And then I went through some of my own tribulations and evolutions and things like that in my life, and found myself struggling at a variety of different parts of my life, first and foremost as a new mom, and just going, oh my God, how do I do this? And finding again that where I was tripping up and being an effective parenting was when I was not paying attention to my own emotional regulation and management and how I felt about my belief as a parent. And then I went through and unfortunately experienced a house fire and found myself in the midst of PTSD. And that was interesting because having been a military wife for many years, I understood PTSD, but I didn't think it was something that necessarily happened outside of the military in that way. And then there I was impacted by this experience. And so I started doing significant research in how to help myself, in addition to traditional therapies and things like that. And I found an amazing coach. And this individual was a therapeutic coach who bridged psychology and coaching. And I thought, wow, this is exactly what I've needed my entire life. Where have you been? And truly helped me sort of evolve and transcend into where I am now with a clearer mindset, a really clear path, all those kinds of things. And I said, I want to do what you do. How do I get there? And so I ended up hiring an entrepreneurial coach and working with this individual, and found my way back to my field of emotions again. So I am in the field now helping individuals who are facing transformation and emotional struggles and challenges in a variety of different areas. And so if people find themselves stuck, unable to move forward, that's where I come in and help them out. So it was a little bit of personal tragedy meets triumph, meets inspiration kind of thing led me here. So
That's it. That's amazing. And it's amazing how our challenges in life shape what inspires us and what pushes us to change and transform ourselves, right? Yeah. And so let's talk about money, because I know you talk a lot about money on your videos, and as well, well, you have a few videos. I don't know if all of them are like, there's a lot of self-growth videos, but the reason why I wanted you to come on today, Renee, is because really I feel like money is a really big issue, especially for women, because I kind of feel, and this is a theory of mine, I kind of feel like women haven't had as much experience with money management as men have. They've been in the workforce longer and have had more experience in that aspect. But also, I feel like we haven't really had to tie our self-worth to money in the past as much as most recently. So it's a whole new kind of journey and whole new world for us in some ways. So with that goes like struggles and things that come up around that, because I feel like women to some extent, this is a general thing, but we have a more well-rounded value system, I think, in some ways. I mean, I think for men, it's more like they have these certain expectations as men, and I know that's changing too. A lot of it's to be the provider and to bring in money, and that's kind of like what's been expected for a really long time now. But now women are coming into that role a little bit more. And can you like maybe share like what you feel like the biggest challenge that you see for women with money management is?
Oh, absolutely. And, I've actually done a few YouTube videos. One I actually did just recently on kids' mindset and money, and was
Oh, that's
talking
good.
very specifically about the lack of financial education, things of that nature, but more specifically how we as individuals and in the things that we say, the way that we feel, the energy that we put out around our children around money, how that gets absorbed over time. And so a lot of the individuals, because I get people in here who go, "You're not a financial coach." And I even say in my video, "I will never pretend to be one." But one of the things that
Right.
we know, people struggle with money because of their emotional connection to it. So this was right in my line. And it just seemed that no matter what client came in my path, whether they were starting a business, whether they were moving out of a divorce and, transforming into a different relationship, or just working on self, that there were always these beliefs about value and worth, about whether or not they were worthy of money, deserving of money. Truly, they wanted money. And in the
Yeah.
coaching experience, we'd sit down and say, "Well, I want to start a business." Okay. And they would start actually moving forward in the business. And then they would reach a roadblock. And it would be once the money was starting to come in. Or individuals who grew up with a very particular mindset about money, such as myself. I grew up with two very hardworking blue collar parents who, again, you work hard for your money. And so when money doesn't come through extreme labor, sometimes we have this essence of guilt that sort of comes about that says, "Wow, is there something wrong with this? Is this tainted? Is this, is this what I'm truly supposed to be doing?" And we're not really conscious of it. Emotionally, those are the things that sort of lie below the level of what we're doing. And so I think it's a combination of a variety of different things. The mindset that we sort of absorb by the way that we grow up, not even realizing what's being said to us and how we're being sort of taught to feel about money. And I'll give you an example. I had a client one time, we started talking about money. And she always said, "I don't care about money. I don't care about money. I don't need money. I'm fine. I don't care about money." And she wasn't doing very well with money. And so I said to her, "Talk to me a little bit about why you feel you don't care." And so when we really dug down deep, what we found out was there were these emotional layers of guilt and shame that her parents had laid in there because they saw money as the guilt, the evil, the negative aspect that will lead you astray. And those people live over there, we live over here. And so there's social, economic aspects to it too, that again, we absorb as kids and we don't realize we're doing so. So there were those sorts of aspects. And then again, when you have this lack mindset that I'm supposed to work constantly, labor for extreme amounts of hours and blood, sweat, and tears in order to get that money, and
Yeah.
that's how we're supposed to live, right? It's hard to undo that. And so that's a huge challenge for women because, again, we always believe that, again, we're supposed to work really, really hard. And I'm reminded of like Carol Gilligan, right? Greatest moral development researcher in feminine research. And she brought out for us that great difference that women think in a relational aspect. Many men do
Yeah.
too. It's not just
Yeah.
men, but
Right.
every decision we make is based on what impact that will have on our next decision and this person and this experience. So choosing a job is not simplistic, where the masculine energy can just go, well, this job makes money, I can provide, this is a great asset to my family. The feminine essence is saying, okay, well, what if we have to move? What about my children's school? What about their friends? What about my family? Will I find a community? Will I have support? It just seems that we struggle with that far more, which then lends itself all the way back to whether we find ourselves stuck and choosing not to advance in our career. And I have a lot of women who have decided to be stay-at-home moms, which is wonderful, but then they have an innate sense of industry.
Yeah.
And they find themselves not feeling fulfilled. And so the guilt becomes really immense for them. Should I go back to work or should I stay home? Will my kids be okay? So yeah, there's just so many emotional ties to that mindset component, again, of whether we grew up with the lack mindset, whether we have the guilt mindset, and whether we truly see ourselves as being too masculine in a way when we move into that career aspect. So I've found those aspects to be definitely true in my research.
Yeah.
Do you find that some of the emotional side of it is that, you know, if you come from a space of altruism, so I want to be a helpful person. I know you want to grow up, you want to be a doctor or a nurse or someone who's very involved with the community, and you just want to be that helper because you grew up as the helper, right? Maybe you had a sick mother or sick father, or maybe you just had this mentality that you were going to be very helpful to the community. And some of these thought processes can kind of limit where you know, like you put yourself in a position of money. So if I want to be a counselor, counselors are only making a certain amount of money versus a doctor who makes a lot of more money. But their categories are different because there's the education the system puts them in a different hierarchy. Not to say that they don't help, they just have a different version of financial status. And that financial status is maybe kind of taken into account to kind of be confusing. So like if I'm going to be a doctor, right, I want to put myself in a place of, you know, hierarchy. I make a lot more money. I have a lot more things I take in responsibility for. And a counselor is in that space of like, oh, I'm going to help this community, and, you know, some people can't pay, and I'm okay with giving my time away, and just because it's the right thing to do. So how often do you get into that kind of conversation where people have picked chosen jobs that are dictating their financial decisions?
Every day. Every day. Yeah. So that's why I'm shaking the head as you were talking about altruism, because even personally, I actually recently on my Instagram page posted this image that says, I do not work for free, nor should you. Because it's been an emotional struggle for those of us who truly are empathic and find ourselves drawn to the field of caring for others, as you mentioned, Maya. And that's huge, because there is this essence of guilt that you want to help, but then the person can't pay. And so you'll go on these reduced plans and those kinds of things, and you find yourself not making any money. And in this type of profession, social workers, teachers, counselors, you know, we're talking about huge emotional labor careers where burnout is immense. And also when we now have that mental tie-up that what we're doing, we have to keep doing, we can't give anymore. And so I work with clients to get them, as the great Iyanla Vanzant has always said, we have to fill our cup first, because if our cup is not full, how can we serve and give to others that we're trying to help? But it's a huge emotional struggle, because again, I'm getting ready to do a YouTube video on mommy guilt. It's huge. It is immense. And it's indoctrinated within us through the media, through stereotypical beliefs and things. And also we sort of absorb them and start to manifest and live those out through ourselves. So it's true. There are people out there who do YouTube videos on empaths and their difficulty in making money and why that is. And, you know, again, I think it comes back to having to see our value. And it's taken a struggle. I mean, I am now 46, you know, and looking at myself going, it has taken a really long time. I've made a great living as a university professor, and, you know, doing consulting things and things of that nature as allowed. But when my business evolved, I've only been in business since 7/17/17. That was my magical number. It was a struggle at first. Money started coming in, clients wanted to work with me, and I was looking going, oh my God, this is great. And then I found myself 3 or 4 months down the road, clients saying, well, I can't pay. And okay, that's fine. Okay, we'll still have a session. And then I found myself exhausted, completely depleted, because in this field, right, you're helping somebody through trauma and emotional strain and struggle, and it takes a lot out, as you guys know. And I found myself burnt out already, and saying, I have to make a decision. And 10 years ago, I walked away from the coaching profession because of that struggle at the first time, and then raising children. And now I said, no, I'm not going to do this, because I know my value. I know that I'm an amazing coach. I know, and I don't mean that from a narcissistic perspective. I just have truly learned my worth. And my clients go on and lead successful lives and make huge transformations. We would never ask a surgeon unless, it was some really emergency situation of which we couldn't pay. We wouldn't dare ask them to work for free. We wouldn't ask that lawyer. Just certain professions, as you mentioned, that we never question. But it's the workers that, the service helper industry, empathic individuals that somehow get that. I have students, most of my students are going on to be social workers, teachers, nurses, counselors, things of that nature. And I had a music student say the same thing. She said, they always ask me to perform for free. She said, the strain it takes on my vocal cords, the energy I have to put forth to perform, they don't seem to get it. They just don't seem to get it. So you're absolutely right.
And it still sounds like a universal societal problem where we underpay teachers, we underpay people versus, the people who do get a lot of, like, the corporates, the people that are out. I mean, and not to say they don't do their own stresses and their own jobs, but it is fundamentally still that division of where the money is supposed to be more important. So, I'll go to my doctor first because I need whatever, my medications or whatever I need to take care of the pain that I want to get rid of right now. Whereas prevention is, maybe going to a personal trainer, maybe going to my health provider of an acupuncturist or massage therapist or somebody, and all these people that are in line to helping me doing preventative work or preventative toward my own, keeping me in my top fit training ability. So for life, right? So like I definitely put myself in more of this, preventative health versus going to a doctor who I pay through insurance and everything else, a very high deductible or something like that. And it just keeps kind of coming back to maybe that's influencing influencing the ideas of how to make money. So I'm just wondering to see if that was true for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I have a lot of experience with teaching overseas. And one of the things I will tell you, in countries such as like the Philippines, as a teacher, you are given a driver, you are given a housekeeper.
Wow.
I mean, you are taken care of. It's like,
that's amazing.
And you just go, oh, why do I want to teach in the States? But, yeah, absolutely. And of course they have, other factors and things that they struggle with from a career perspective. But I mean, there are certainly different systems in place culturally around the world that vary greatly, for sure. And that does. And I think we as women, we are just drawn to very specific careers, due to passion, but also sometimes we just fall into the footsteps of family members. Well, we're all teachers or we're all social workers, and we become really passionate about what our mothers did. But my mom, worked at the zoo, and, I was looking at that going, I love animals, but I never had any desire to do that. And my dad, worked in the automotive industry, and I looked at that. I was like, that's not anything that interests me. And I, almost went into an engineering program and, thought about that. It would make my parents really happy. But then I had this internal struggle that just kept saying, this is not your path. This is not your dharma. This is not your calling. And I'm glad that I ignored the other one, but I would probably be far more economically savvy had I gone the other path versus finding my finance in my 40s. But from a from an
Yeah.
emotional perspective, I feel completely satisfied in the work that I do and very happy. And I think, again, we as women, we struggle in finding that intersection between, being able to provide as well now. But this is very new, Allison. Like you said before, it's
Yeah.
such a struggle to move between our masculine and feminine essence. And I know you've had individuals on the show in the past who've talked about that. And that
Right.
is something that a lot of my clients really do struggle with. When should I be in that masculine essence, and how does that work? Well, when you're paying bills and you're making decisions and you're problem solving, that's a great place to be. And then when I'm with my children and I'm nurturing and those kinds of things, I move back into that space. And
Yeah.
men are struggling with it too, though. I have a young boy, and he
Yeah.
is one of those individuals who I see him move along that energy perspective, that spectrum, and he really struggles at times to be, soft and emotional, because that's naturally what comes to him. And I still see those societal things come out. But again, as the professor in this field, of course, I'm trying to break that for him and allow him to have that space. But I think we're going to see a lot more boys in the next 10, 15 years who are going to have the same emotional struggle. And I call it the lost boys. I'm actually writing a piece right now on that,
Oh,
on
that's
how
interesting. Yeah.
really have to change the way we're teaching boys, change the way that we're parenting boys today, because it's not the old adage of masculinity, and it's not a single mother's fault. It's none of that.
Yeah.
That's where we
Yeah.
sort of went to in the last 15 years with money, particularly. It's like single mothers, we were all messing up the world. No, it's just, again, a very different space and time now for everybody, and especially for our kids. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's going to be interesting to see how this all shifts.
That is really interesting. And about I never thought about that with boys, but it is there. Everything's changing for boys, in my opinion. I have two boys, one 14 and 16, and even like relationships, those are really confusing right now. And so like I think I've talked about this in another show, and I don't want to put too much of their personal life on my podcast, but they're having, it's hard, like it's hard enough talking to girls and stuff when you're a young boy, and then all this other stuff, it goes in the mix when everything gets kind of complicated like it is right now. And so they're figuring it out, but I suspect they'll probably be smarter than I was when I was that age. And coming from their perspective, there's a lot of like pressure and weight on their shoulders to and I think that also translates into men making the money. And so I would like to see, actually, as we progress and evolve, like maybe more of a balance, because I think there is some great things you can get from each person being the breadwinner at one point in the relationship, or even just both people like making a lot of money together. There maybe we're coming to that place of more equal but different kind of place. Like we're not completely the same. Like we're both still men and women, but we're kind of bringing equal like types of energy and balancing each other out in that way, especially from a financial standpoint. Because I think where I was going with it was men, I feel like, have really had that weight on their shoulders to provide, which I think is probably what men want to do to some extent, but then I think it becomes a burden if it's too much, right? So so that's where we being independent, and I think for me, my struggle has been more about like just trusting that abundance factor, that as an entrepreneur, it's you don't really know for sure where, as you know, Renee, it's unpredictable at times. But
yeah, and I talk to a lot of my clients about this. I say, trust the universe, and they look at me like, what? So, again, you kind of have to get into this practice, though, of, the way to manifest is a variety of different things, right? It's not just wishing on a star, I want $1 million, I want $1 million. I mean, that is, the component of the words, the narrative about manifesting. But you also have to believe it. You also have to have the energy component. You truly have to let go. You have to surrender after a point that you've done the work and you've made the wishes and you've written out what you desire and those kinds of things. I found myself a couple of years ago sitting in front of my laptop, and sometimes if I don't work in the summer as a professor, I don't get paid. And this was before I opened my business, and I looked at it, I was like, wow, this is gonna be kind of tight. How are we gonna do this? And I remember saying to myself, I heard myself in my own head, listen how you just talk to yourself. You talk to yourself as though it won't come. And it really is about changing that self-talk that you have in your own mind, of recognizing, I know that this will change. I know that there will be more. There always is more. There's always more opportunity. And recently, this is the video that I did on kids' mindset and money. I saw it with my own children. As I say in the video, my son was, the minute he had money, Mommy, can we go? Can we go to the store? Can we spend it? And all of it was gone. And my daughter, she was the money hoarder. And it was like, no, she wouldn't buy anything, nothing. And I'm like, sweetheart, those pants have holes in them. And, you know, if you want something extra at this moment, you know, she had her clothes, but of course she liked these very particular things. No, I don't want to spend my money. And she had hundreds in the bank at 7 years old. And I got to the point where people would say, well, her mindset was stronger because she's saving. His mindset is not so good because he's spending. And I said, neither was good. It's about fluidity on the spectrum of seeing money as fluid. And when we put money out, money does come back. And so it has to be in circulation. It can't lay static. The universe doesn't understand that, you know, stagnation of energy. It always has to be flowing. And so we certainly don't want to spend it all, but my kids started getting into this practice of, well, I have $10. Can I just spend, you know, $2? Or I have $100 from Christmas from grandma. Can I spend $20? And I love that change in that mindset, because now they understood that if they spend in something that would bring value to their life, they would feel better about themselves. They would be more autonomous and more industrious, and they would do more in other things, which means they could do more chores or ask to do more, you know, things to help around the house or help other people. And when you're providing service to other people, guess what? Doors open for you. And next thing you know, somebody was offering my son, you know, different things, different gifts were coming his way because he was being helpful. And it just changed the way that they thought about money. And I said, wow, isn't this interesting? It's not just the narrative of what you want, it's the energy and the way that you work with that energy that truly brings that into your life.
Yeah. So the money management and then the aspect of really actually connecting is part of an abundance. It's an abundance factor, not just about the money, but also the connections you're making by spending and making it, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this transcends into everything, relationships and all that kind of stuff, right?
Absolutely. That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. So yeah. I'm an older mom. Yeah. Definitely waited a long time to have babies, but yeah, they're good. They're good.
Not too old. That was what, 35 then?
37 and 39. I had them. Yeah.
That's pretty average now, right?
It felt like it. And speaking of money, it's like, thank God, because I had money by the time they came around.
That is actually an interesting segue, because I'd like to actually talk about that, because I noticed some of the conversations I've had with single moms is an interesting universal moment. Like, two of the people I know, literally their lives were in, you know, they were doing the typical, like, single woman getting their career started and everything. And then they do like a life change. So one of them decided to go into more of the healthcare field, and she was more corporate. And then sure enough, right after she did that, she got pregnant. Then she's a single mom. So luckily she had that nice cushion from her corporate job to kind of bring her back into being able to be a single mom and not be struggling. We look back on it and we talk about it, and it's kind of interesting to see how it laid out the segue for the child to come into her life at the time when she felt more stable. Whereas, you know, some of them struggle being a mom, you know, and then because they don't have the financial backing, and then they either have to be more on these programs and stuff. And, you know, and you were talking about emotional changes for everyone. The children are different, the way they are in terms of how they think about money, things like that. It's an interesting dichotomy to see where, if you are kind of in alignment with what changes you're supposed to go in, some things will line up so that you will have that money when you need it.
Yeah, absolutely. Alignment is key. And, you know, for me, I didn't necessarily choose to wait till I was 37 and 39 to have my children. I definitely struggled to have my daughter. It took several years and fertility options and things of that nature. And, I found myself kind of questioning and starting to get really concerned about the fact that, I wasn't able to get pregnant. And we looked at it at a lot of different things, and there was no health reason, nothing going on. And so I started to look at my life more from an energy perspective. And I started to say, what else could be going on that is causing some of these issues? And it definitely was a sort of belief that I never really pictured myself as a mother. I never pictured myself as a provider of that way. This is not a joke, but it's funny. I was voted least likely to ever have children in my high school class. And I thought to myself, when I went back, when I had my high school reunion, I said to everybody, why was that? And they said, well, you were valedictorian. You were smart. We knew you were going on and doing great things with your life. And I said, but I still wanted to have kids.
Wow.
But then I thought to myself,
Huh.
did I really ever say that to myself? Did I ever put it in my mind, or did I just assume my body knew that? And so long story short, I found myself in my 30s, and my kid's father and I are looking at each other going, do you want kids? I don't know. Do you want kids? I don't know. And so I don't think we ever really had that talk. And I never truly talked to my own being, to my soul, that I trusted my body to do such an amazing thing as to carry a child and to birth a child and to have a child. And next thing I know, I just let go. I let go and surrender. And the kid's father was deployed and went overseas, and I said, I'm done. And I let go. Month later, I'm waiting on the cable guy to come to my house, and I'm crying. I'm just crying. I'm so upset because the cable's not working. Are you okay, ma'am? Are you okay? I went, and of course, my mom, I almost passed out in the store the next day. My mother says, you're pregnant. And so amazingly, after I let go and surrender to universal principles and forces, everything just started coming at me, which was overwhelming in itself, but it started happening. So the connection I'm making to that and what you were describing with single mothers as well, who find themselves in these interesting places and interesting time-space realities, is that sometimes we try to force ourselves into a situation, whether it be a job or being a parent or those kinds of things. And yet the universe sort of had a different story for us, had a different history for us, that we tried to navigate against it. And I'm reminded of like Gary Zukav's book, right? The Seed of the Soul, that again, as we think of our lives, of our souls as these motherships, not UFOs, but, on the water kind of motherships moving. And yet when our lives are all these different ships around this mothership he sort of described. And many people go, what is he talking about? But it makes so much sense when you realize that if you go with the current, everything is so much easier. If you listen to the universe and what it's trying to tell you, and how you can have money and how you can have children and how you can be happy, if you would just pay attention to what's sort of already in store for you versus trying to force and go the opposite direction against the current and then try to figure out why life is so hard.
Yeah.
And so I'm never shocked when these mothers or even my male clients tell me, oh my God, life is amazing. And when I let go and I started feeling better, my kids' behavior just sort of shifted and I didn't have to do anything else. Isn't that amazing? It's absolutely amazing. So I agree with you. I think that when we can surrender and release and allow some of this to come to us after we've already done the work and we start believing in ourselves that these things can happen, they happen. It's not a magic formula. Everybody says, what's your secret sauce kind of thing? How did you get to be able to finally have money and have your children and, be happy and have the life that you have? And I said, it was sort of where preparation sort of met this release, surrender moment of believing that this was meant to be. And it's just sort of falling into place. I'm starting now to get calls, to do interviews and, to be on speaking panels and things like that. And it's all coming at me too, where normally my old self would probably sabotage that and not believe in the potential of that and go, oh, I can't do that. I won't be able to. Who am I? I'm just a little inner city girl. Who am I to be able to do that? Right. And now I stop myself and I say, you are worthy. You are valuable. Your word helps people. It transforms people's lives. Why do you feel that you wouldn't be able to do this? And then the money just comes, and it comes with that. And so there is this rebalancing now of not feeling guilty about your success, trusting in the universe that you're on your path and it feels really good, and just starting to let go. So,
Right.
Yeah.
yeah.
And then I last thing I think was the concept of like, what Allison, you brought it up was, we don't really know the roles. Males were really taught years in the making of how you're going to provide for a family. And then they would go into the corporate world, and then they would be transcended through the levels of, up to CEO or something. And there was always this structure, right? And one of the things about entrepreneurship is that you end up learning that you have to invest in your business and invest and invest and invest. And sometimes that risk is a little bit higher than you've made yourself very aware of because you've never done it before. And I noticed that most of the time when we start to look at this entrepreneurial kind of way of living that seems to be kind of flowing into our society now, as everyone's trying to either do something different or do something on their own because they really have this passion to either do it in a different way or whatever. That the entrepreneurial side of it comes into knowing that it's okay to take the risk. Like if I have to put more money into something where, I don't think that was kind of structured in an aspect for people who didn't have a business perspective. If they didn't get thrown into being in the corporate world, it's very hard to start a business online or start a home business that you want to start marketing out into the world. And that part of it gets kind of lost. A lot of people don't really see that there's a lot more work that has to go in it. And Alice and I've talked about this podcast. It's definitely shown us like we're investing a lot more than we realize, and more we like it and we do it. But a lot of this is a lot more work and time and effort, and and we don't always see the money coming out of it yet. Like that's the problem. Like most of the times, are big corporations, they started. You don't see investments coming back to you at least 2 to 3 years afterwards. So there's an interesting perspective once you start doing entrepreneurial work.
Absolutely. And I think, starting up a YouTube channel, that I never saw that any more clear than starting up a YouTube channel. And it was like, why is this person getting 1 million views on this shock video, which is not really of any value other than entertainment.
Right.
And I'm over here trying to save people's lives, and I got 305 views on my last video. It's a frustrating place to be. But then I let go and realized again, when I looked at my colleagues in the field, they were going through a very similar situation. And it's not that we couldn't up our videos and get that type of viewer response, but it's different because, again, we have individuals in this field who come to us in trauma, who come to us through emotional instability or just reaching a transformational part in their lives where they're not going to make a decision immediately. There's always this time that sort of happens versus if you're having to go to the ER, you have to make a decision right now. If you're, financially wanting to make an investment, time may not be on your side. You might lose that opportunity. And so I think in the self-help, emotional, personal development field, it's really different. But I think too, as an entrepreneur, you're right in that idea of risk taking. I can make this connection back to schools as well as an educational psychologist because my millennial students are so different than I think of when I first started my career. And the fear that I see and the levels of anxiety that I see in my students to be comfortable with just making a decision about what topic to choose for a paper is so much more emotionally laden than it was 23 years ago. That I truly believe standardized testing had a huge impact on motivation and emotion when there's only a right answer versus let's be creative and find our way. And while they still do that in schools today, there's lots of creative outlets and lots of wonderful teaching and pedagogy happening. There's still a test at the springtime that determines your worth and your value, whether it's Iowa or CAT or, achievement tests or whatever your state requires. These kids are growing up being told, but okay, you can learn it that way, but you still need to do it this way because you're going to be tested on this. That greatly gets indoctrinated in us on how do we make decisions. Is it okay to do that? Should I make, well, they tell me not to do that. I should just trust myself. And unfortunately, it doesn't go together. And so we're finding a lot of our students now who are in my college level courses with immense levels of anxiety, And fortunately, I have this training and I have this background and I recognize the anxiety patterns in my classroom, and I talk to them about this all the time, and they get more comfortable taking risks and talking in front of others and doing things that make them otherwise want to flee or run away. Or, I know why you're not coming to class. I know what's really happening, and you're stressed out, and that's okay. But a lot of people don't know how to touch people emotionally like that, to understand whether it's money or academics or relationships, that my struggle is real and there's something in my mindset that's causing me to be stuck, right? So, I mean, it's amazing that we can tie it back to the schools, but we can.
Yeah.
And, we're luckily, you have people like Lisa Peterson out there today who are doing amazing educational, economic, financial sort of programs, and doing chakra work and things like that with individuals to clear financial, blocks and things of that, and bringing meditation to school. So we're keeping our fingers crossed that this is all going to shift in the next 5 to 10 years.
That's amazing. I kind of have always had a negative view of the testing, but I'd never thought about it from that perspective of like taking the trust away from people and trusting themselves. And Maya and I talk a lot about that on the show about, we see a lot of that too with just nutrition coaching. Like they have a real issue trusting themselves about even eating certain foods, so I guess we see it on a broad spectrum here in every facet of life. And maybe more and more as the next generation comes up. And I guess part of that could be we have so many choices and so much information now. How do you decipher on what's right and wrong? Also, because, we've been trained out of the trust in ourselves, which I think as a young adult, that's the time where you start to build that trust, and maybe that's not happening right now.
Yeah, there is a word that I always liked. It's discernment. Like it's never really talked about much anymore, but there's a practice, and it used to be in the more spiritual kind of laws of how to discern from like whether a guru or someone is your teacher or not. And you would take, information from a teacher, and then you would decipher whether or not it was for you or not, and whether you followed that teacher or not. But discernment seems to be a big issue. And I'm wondering how much emotions are either being suppressed or emotions are being heightened by artificial drugs, or by not being able to talk about emotions, or talking too much about emotions, like not allowing them oneself to say, you know what, I think I've told this story quite enough and I'm okay now. That kind of structuring people into saying, well, I've revisited this and, I'm good. I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
It happened.
Yeah, making a decision or on that, saying, okay, I'm going to trust that I'm all right, right? Even
Right.
that. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think it kind of goes back. I even did a YouTube video on this when, it's time to say goodbye.
Yeah.
And I'm even teaching parents how to help your kids understand when it's time to just let go of something. And, it's okay to quit in a certain way, right? There are rules about this, of course, even in my family. It's like we don't quit something mid-season. We don't leave coaches in the lurch. We don't, things like that. But spiritually, if we find ourselves at a crossroads of not feeling fulfilled in what we're doing, then let's talk about that. Let's talk about what else you'd rather do or how you'd rather do it. We have a lot of open dialogue in this house about that. And so, I think emotionally they feel much more comfortable expressing those kinds of things and those challenges versus many of us who grew up was like, suck it up, buttercup, and just finish it out. And you're going to, do what you have to do. We don't ever quit. I get that. I get that in a way. I really do. I'm not saying we just, let people down and leave things mid-season or something like that. But at the same time, what Maya's talking about, this discernment, not only is it hard to know where our beliefs lie and what we're being taught and whether they work for us or not, but also even within our own selves. This is why I called my business Transcendent Heart and the Inner Revolution, because as we look within our own inner landscape, sometimes we get confused where our ego tries to tell the story and where our soul is really trying to lead us. And our ego is that child level. It immediately acts out emotionally. It reacts. It's like, no, that can't be right. I don't like what you said about me, or this feels really scary and I don't want to do it. And so we can't discern between if it's our inner child sort of talking or our adult self, right, which is level 2. which is much more pragmatic and rational and can think through things. And a lot of my clients really struggle with that. They
Wow.
really struggle. And so the money issues, the relational issues, the self-worth issues come down to who's in the driver's seat. And we talk a lot about that in my program. And I say, if your inner child is in the driver's seat, no wonder why your life is feeling the way that it is. You have whatever age you sort of were stuck at
Yeah.
driving your financial decisions. No wonder why you're broke. No wonder why you feel like you don't deserve that money, because emotionally you are invested as an 11-year-old or a 17-year-old or whatever emotional story you're trying to tell. And so we do lots of exercises and where we try to help them discern when they are in alignment, when they are not in alignment. And when they're not in alignment, what are some strategies we can do to raise ourselves vibrationally and begin to not be negative towards that inner child, because we need him or her sometimes, we really
Right.
do. But how do we let them kind of just go and play and do their thing and let me as the adult drive those decisions? So yeah, I just did a meditation on this called the inner child, and it really is about trying to find that space and forgive yourself for things in your past and move on and feel comfortable, because all this stuff comes forward with us. So it's
Yeah.
amazing when you look at your bank account and you have this habit of always looking at it right as soon as you know you're the most depleted,
Yeah.
right?
There is something about that, isn't
Coming
there?
in.
Yeah.
I
It's
tell
like
my
the alarm
clients,
clock went off, and all of a
yeah,
sudden, like, oh, let's torture ourselves. Yes,
yeah,
let's
let's
do
go
that.
look at our bank account 2 days before we're about to get paid. No,
Mhm.
that's the worst time you should look at your bank account. If you are in that
Yeah.
type of situation, create a financial plan. Again, I am no financial advisor, but create a financial plan where you pay everything when you have the money, and you can just relax in those next couple of weeks and be in more of
Yeah.
a creative mode and industrious mode to start doing other things. The last thing I wanted to say too about that was, we are in an era now where we can't put all of our financial beliefs, hopes, and dreams into one thing anymore.
Right.
It's almost too scary, too risky to just hope and think that that career is going to be around. Our millennials, it says that they change
Uh-huh.
jobs 10 to 20 times, right?
Yeah.
Before they're even 30.
Even now, they're doing 3 or 4 jobs. Like
Oh,
for my
man.
own self, I
We
do
all are.
personal training.
Yeah, that's true.
I do massage. I do, swim instruction. I do commercial real estate. I do the
Yeah.
podcast. Come on, like
Yeah.
just bring it all on, because there's really no limit to the schedule. It's just, if I had the time, I can fit it in there. But I realized like it actually works a little bit better for the way I like. And I always found that when anybody would say, find your niche and find one thing and do it well, I have a struggle with that. I'd be like, but I want to do this and I want to do that. And yeah, I know we're not allowed to, like the universe is going to say you can't do it all, but there is some version of all these things coming in and interplaying with it. So like how I work
Mhm.
with someone in one realm actually translates into another. So like say I'm working
Exactly.
with someone with a personal training issue, then I say, okay, well, how about swimming? Because that's going to be a cardio and that would help you move this way and move you that way without hurting yourself. But all these things, even if we move into looking at how you're a professor and now you're an emotional coach who works with people, and your structuring of your pattern has kind of melded different fields together, because
Yeah.
from what I understand, you're helping people learn their habits and trying to reconstruct a different habit that is helping them flow better. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, no wonder we're all doing different things at one time. It's a
Yeah.
different kind of mentality, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah, we get in those tunnels, right? That tunnel vision of this is what we're going to do for the rest of our lives, and it's like, no, you don't get confused about purpose versus passion versus profession, right? Those are
Yeah.
very three different P words that we need to keep separated. That many times our profession may serve our purpose and may be what we're passionate about, but for many people it isn't. And that's okay, because if that's what you need to be financially stable right now, then that's what you have to do. But you can also find your purpose and your passion in a variety of things. The other thing that I try to get people to understand is, and this is why I think I was drawn to your show when I was contacted, I live my years thematically. And I always have a theme for every single year. This year was about integration. It was about figuring out how to integrate all the pieces of me and what that looks like to come together with this underlying purpose. What is that? It's to help people transform their lives. It doesn't matter what it is in. No, I'm not a financial expert. No, I'm not, I was an athlete, but no, I don't want to be a coach. I can't help you there. But I certainly can help you with the underlying principles to help you understand why you think the way you do, why you feel the way you do, how to rectify some of those things emotionally, and then catapult them up to the next level of coach or to the next level of person that can take them to that next space. And so we can't keep thinking about ourselves unidimensionally. We have to think about being broader. And I think the other weakness with people is also everyone's trying to do their own thing in their own way. And this is a year of alliances. Universally, the universe is really pulling us to work together, to do things together, and to co-create and do things of that nature. And I think that particularly as women, we're going to be far more successful if we can find a smaller community of people who are like-minded, going in the same direction, but maybe do a different part of our niche, and we come together and build this really beautiful collaborative. We'll be more likely to take that risk versus wanting to do it all by ourselves, because again, as Carol Gilligan sort of showed us, we're relational beings. No wonder we feel unnatural as entrepreneurs if we're doing everything. I hate editing my videos. I hate it. I get angry. I get emotional. I don't like it. And I'm looking at Adobe Premiere going, I hate you. And I would love to have somebody else do my videos. But something in my mind made me feel guilty that I should be doing this. This is my thing. And no, I've released it to the universe now, God willing. And that's a piece that I feel less stressed, not having to think about all of that. And the other thing too, is I have people think about not only what are they passionate about, purposeful about, but what do you fear? What was the thing in your story that you tried to hide, that you were told wasn't right, or you shrunk from, you just tried to put it away, but that voice keeps coming out and talking to you and talking to you and talking to you. And mine was being a kid who suffered with anxiety and panic. And here I found myself at these emotional climaxes in my life, having the skill and understanding of how to move myself through that, but a lot of people didn't. And so I stopped hiding from my story. I stopped hiding from not being able to tell people I had panic disorder, anxiety disorder, things like that. And then when I started telling my story, all of these students waking up, that's me, that's me. Oh, wow. All of my clients hearing that in their story, and in their story too, having faith and belief in themselves that they can then do this too. And so I think, again, in this time, space, reality now, it's going to be more about not only what you're good at, what are you afraid of, how do you build that together to make your interesting story? And I think that's where abundance is going to come from.
So. We have a teacher fantastic. That we both know that actually always remind me of great reasons for why your purpose or whatever you're here for is that your story matters.
Yeah.
And the reasons why is that you're supposed to tell your story to as many people as you possibly can, whether or not their success rate is high because you help them. It's about whether your connection to that person is a kind of interweaving of your energy and that person's energy at that time of moment that is supposed to come. And every time you keep your voice down, or you keep thinking that you're not supposed to say something because it might contradict some kind of thing. So like, I've experienced where I have to revisit myself and say, wait a minute, it's okay for me to disagree with this conversation right now. Doesn't mean I have to be rude about it, but I can come into a space of saying, have you ever thought about it this way? And I just love that idea that, if you know that your voice and your story matter, then that is why your trajectory to whoever you're supposed to be in front of you is important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, again, the power of narrative is just so amazing in transforming people's lives. I tell people, you don't have to be your history. You just don't. You get the
Yeah.
chance to pick up that pen or put your hands on that keyboard and write the next chapters of your life. They can be whatever you want to be. And people are like, really? I can do that? And so, again, it's that idea of surrendering and releasing to believing that you have the power to transform your life. You really, really do. You don't have to be stuck in that karma. Yes, it's a part of your reality, and you have to figure out how to break that cycle by getting in tune with the things that kept you stuck, right? But like the greatest people out there always say, what got you stuck isn't going to get you unstuck. You've got to think about that other way of telling your story now, and not to be ashamed, not to be afraid. And my male clients have a lot of high levels of shame as well. It's not just women in being able to transform and get unstuck, because there's a lot of stuff in their narrative. And tell that story, release it, move on. And that's been the powerful piece.
And I think back to that same story is that, maybe we're seeing more men talk about it, as we've always been told that they've had to keep their story quiet because it's the manly thing to do. But I think more and more what we're seeing is that everyone's on the same playing field. It's just another way of kind of saying my story, similar to yours, but in a different way. I have my own version. And the more that everyone's coming to the surface with that, then we're seeing more an equalization of like men and women are both having struggles, whether or not it's in that part of finances or field of family or relationships, whatever it comes to.
Yeah, and this is going to be the piece, like I said about boys, the lost boys. Teachers, be ready, because we have these boys who want to tell their story now, but are crazy kinetic and out there and moving. So you're going to have this really, really physically active boy who's going to be talking 1,000,000 miles a minute. And I love it. I am so excited about where we're going in this world and seeing these emotional changes in kids. I just pray that the school systems are going to get caught up and help us teach meditation and help kids learn to quiet their mind and believe in these universal principles and have abundant lives, just like we can do as adults too.
That sounds awesome.
That's great. So thanks so much, Renee, for coming on. Can you tell everybody real quick where they can find you?
Oh, absolutely. My website is transcendentheart.com. My YouTube channel is under Dr. Renee Mudrey, and I'm actually going to be hosting a live event coming up here in May in Cleveland, Ohio, actually, where we're going to be talking about the power of the narrative and transforming your life. So that will be on my website here shortly.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Renee.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you, Renee. It was really nice meeting you and having this wonderful conversation.